All right, so this is episode 6. We're doing your pick today, Defending Your Life, 1991. Let's just, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about how we both saw this when we were younger, right?
Yeah, it was one of those films. So 1991, I'm trying to desperately do the math, but I had to be like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
It was on HBO, and it was just one morning. I go into the living room. My dad is already sitting there, and it started. And I'm just sitting there watching it with him. And it's the scene where he gets the car, so he's driving, and he's singing "Something's Coming" by who is it? It's What's Up, Doc?
Oh, okay.
Barbra Streisand.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus, thank God. So he's singing "Something's Coming" by Barbra Streisand, and it was the funniest thing I'd seen. My dad's laughing, I'm laughing, and so right there was kind of a connection, and it was one of those things where it's like you learn how to laugh through what your dad likes.
Yeah.
And there's the moment during that scene when he's driving, and first he tries to merge over, and he sees the guy beeps at him, and he's like, and he goes back over. So that's funny. But then when the guy is screaming at him, and it's like, do we all have to listen to that?
Right.
And he just goes like that.
That was great.
And there was something about the way my dad laughed at that moment where I'm like, oh, it's a different type of laugh. Like I registered it as a different type of laugh. Like you're laughing at this because it's like, I do this. And I don't know, like we just watched the whole movie, and it always, like, it's not like I watched it and I was like, I instantly loved it, I liked it, and remembered that moment of laughing at it with my dad.
Yeah.
And I remember just laughing at several parts of like what stuff that Albert Brooks was doing, like the way I would laugh at like Bill Murray and Ghostbusters at that time.
Yeah. Delivery, like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I'm laughing at a personality.
Right.
And a way someone acts and is and delivers a line. And then, so like, years later, like in high school, then I started, like, I watched Mother, I watched Broadcast News. So then I started to like really like develop kind of like a man crush on Albert Brooks and just loving his style. Same way, like, around that same time I was also getting into Woody Allen, kind of a similar thing.
And I just was thinking of Woody Allen, how it's a similar type of neurotic individual, and
it's like it's like that type of neurotic humor.
Yes,
was something that I just was like, oh, this.
Right.
And
Larry David, similar thing.
I'm actually thinking about, like, it's one of the reasons probably why I loved Midnight Run so much, because of Charles Grodin. Right.
Yeah.
So definitely liked that. I always remembered it, and then in college, as I was starting to like really getting into screenwriting and writing and thinking about making shorts and movies and all this stuff, like I always had this idea that because I loved people like Woody Allen and Cameron Crowe and James L. Brooks, that it's like you make a movie about what's going on with you. Like you open up your diary and it's like what you're doing. It's kind of like what Judd Apatow is doing right now.
Right, and it's funny because it's relatable.
Yes.
Like you can identify with so many things in those types of movies.
Right. And it's just a way to, kind of like why I like stand-up comedy so much too, is like, that's what you do. Like you get up there and you talk about you, at least the stand-up comedy that I respond to the most. And with Albert Brooks, the more like I watched everything, and with like I remember hearing an interview with George Carlin, and he was talking about all like that he puts out a comedy album like every 2 years, and that he was talking about it, and he's like, well, I just get up there and I talk about the things that are important to me, and then I throw it away, and then when I get to the next one, it's like I have to go swimming inside here for what else is going on with me. And eventually you get to like this really, you know, the dark stuff, the fears that you have. And if you look at Albert Brooks, it's like that's what he did throughout his whole filmmaking career. And it's like, so he started with the movie Real Life. Right. And that's like a satire about reality TV and films, and it's like let me talk about how I feel about the business that I'm in. Then he does Modern Romance. And it's like, let me talk about the relationships that I had, like how I deal with being broken up with. Then he does Lost in America. And it's like how do I feel?
That's probably my favorite movie that he did.
And that's what like everyone would think of, like, you know, that's the one that's like the, you know, it's the funniest, and I'm not putting it like it, I love it, and it is very funny. But that's like, you know, how do I feel about where I am at this stage in my life, middle-aged? I've got the wife, I've got the career, but I still have this kind of fantasy about, you know, what about when I saw Easy Rider and I thought about dropping out of society?
And you know, there's a Peter Sellers movie, I Love You, Alice B. Toklas, which will be a future back pocket film of mine, that's a similar type thing. And then American Beauty, you know, same. And so it's a reoccurring kind of motif throughout film. I mean, you could probably trace it back even earlier than films in the counterculture movement of like, earlier than that, the beatnik movement. Then you know, I mean, there's always going to be that. It's a nice subject to structure a film around.
And with this, it's like he got to a point where it's like, okay, what else do I have to talk about? And why this film hits me, and for my money is my favorite Albert Brooks film, why it means so much to me, is that he came up with an idea to openly talk about his fears, how he deals with fear, how it stops him from getting the things that he could want. And it gets to a point where he wrote this movie to get to a point where he can look at himself and be like, oh, I'm a coward. And to get to a point like that, like where you're dealing with like that, like you're being that personal, you're being that open and honest about yourself.
I mean, who knows how close to being autobiographical some of these scenes that are shown throughout the trial, who knows how close they are to reality.
And even if it isn't, like, you still have to be like, okay, well, if I was in this situation, if I was in the afterlife, and they had this, and they were showing things. Of course,
I mean, it's like, definitely, that's got to be going through the head of anyone watching this movie.
And he was able to, like I said, like, it's just like, it's such a great story to be able to just like open up the diary and be like, okay, what's some embarrassing crap that I can remember about my life, of things that happened to me. You know, maybe he didn't have that similar situation with the bully, but I mean, everyone has that moment where like you're like, you know, you had the moment with that guy that was picking a fight with you, and you probably wanted to act out, but either you were afraid to, or you didn't want to get your butt kicked, and that's identifiable, and he keeps going down the line, and
well, you know, as brilliant as that device is as a plot piece, the fact that it's also a romance is pretty amazing as well to me.
And especially for him, and I think when the film came out, and it's weird because we were just talking about how there's not a lot of, you know, documentation about the movie. There's not a lot of research to be done, and you know, I don't even have any recollection because I was too young, but I don't have a recollection of like whether or not it was successful or not.
Right.
I think it was like, you know, for an Albert Brooks movie, I think it was one of his most successful.
Right.
But still, it seemed
I think that was one thing on the Wikipedia entry, that it was not successful, quote unquote. But I still think people went out and saw it who liked his films, right?
Yeah.
It's like more one of those.
Right. And I remember, well, I read Roger Ebert's review of it, but also one time I dug up they archived the Siskel and Ebert show, and I watched their review of it. And they both kind of said, like, you know, Roger Ebert appreciated that for the first time he found a way to end a film.
I love the ending.
Yeah.
How could, my last note on my last card is, who could not love this ending? How was it possible? I mean, it's like, so satisfying.
Yes. And in an earned way. Like, I think a lot of people were surprised that Albert Brooks did a movie like this because it does end on such a happy, high note, and that he's not known for. He's known for being a little bit more cynical, a little bit more acidic.
Well, because he's actually kind of processing Bergman a little bit the same way Woody Allen did in his career.
Yeah.
Except he, instead of, in the ending, he almost like shifts it into like a more, into a different territory.
It's kind of like a Chaplin ending.
Yeah. Because you're pulling for that character, and you really want them to find happiness.
Do. And it's one of those great kind of it's one of those great movies where it's this high concept fantasy story, but deals with deep, personal, somewhat profound ideas. So I would kind of put it in the same league as Groundhog Day.
And it reminds me of Heaven Can Wait a little bit too. Same type of, almost the same type of feel to the scenes. Almost, it's interesting. And
their relationship, the way it blossoms, the way it is, the way they are with each other, and just like I love Meryl Streep in this.
She's
really
great.
do.
And I'm not the biggest fan of her, and I love her in this.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite performances by her. She loses herself in it. She is this person. I really feel that.
And Rip Torn, who
rest in peace,
unfortunately we just lost.
I mean, this might be my favorite performance of his in a great career. Because Men in Black, I mean, you look at like some of his performances. I mean, it's like, but he just nails this. Is it Edward Everett Horton in Heaven Can Wait? There's a character actor that Lubitsch used that I feel like was a similar character. That just makes me think. It's just when the actor just really embodies that character in a way that's just very unique.
And their byplay with each other, and just the whole like the level of imagination that Albert Brooks is able to employ in this, really, like, for the first time. I don't think there's any other movie where he deals with a kind of a fantasy element like this, where you know, the whole thing about you can eat whatever you want,
right?
The whole thing about like the big brains versus the little brains.
I mean, I would have to say that Ricky Gervais used this as a sort of source of inspiration for the invention of lying. Just the way the set pieces are, and the way it kind of plays out.
I feel like between this and Lost in America, like and even Modern Romance, like Albert Brooks is a big person for a lot of people, and it can't help but be a back pocket just because he's certainly revered within the industry. I think outside, he's, you know, the people who know him and love him.
Right.
But there's still a lot of people who don't know who Albert Brooks is.
Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner definitely popped up in my head as I was watching this as sources of inspiration for him.
Definitely.
I mean, obviously Mel Brooks is a little more reliant on punchlines and a whole different kind of feel, but there's definitely some humor in here that reminded me of some bits when he goes. he goes, who were you? She goes, she's like, who? No, yeah. He says, who were you? She's like, Prince Valiant. Well, who are you? Dinner. That's a Mel Brooks line. Yeah. Like that really is boom, boom, set up. I mean, it's just like.
Do you know that? So he and Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner were friends when they were,
like
teenagers,
like growing up.
Yeah, and that, they would kind of hang around because Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner were so close, and they always had like these parties, and they had all their friends over. Do you know that? So Albert Brooks used to do material in front of them.
That's so great.
And Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner said to Rob, it was like, invite him over again. We want him to do that bit for our friends.
That's so great.
And they would laugh. Like Rob Reiner tells us, he would have Mel Brooks like on the floor, laughing. That's the type of comedy mind that Albert Brooks is.
There's a similar story about Jonah Hill growing up, that he was friends with Dustin Hoffman's kids, and that he would do these prank calls. And apparently Dustin Hoffman was like, who is this guy? Like, just because he was just hilarious.
Yeah. But there's not many, I can think of like something like Groundhog Day, or even like something like City Slickers, where you watch it as a kid and you laugh at it, but it's only when you get older that you look at it and you're like, oh, you know what? It's actually really a good movie. Yeah. It's really well written. It's really well observed.
And it's a film you've got to see as an adult too. Yeah. Again, like I watched it with my dad and my brother. Yeah. I remember if it was on HBO, or if my dad rented it or whatever. I know he was an Albert Brooks fan, so I remember similar experience of kind of, I was intrigued by it. I laughed at the parts that are just kind of universally funny, right? That you just laugh at that age. But you don't really appreciate the nuance of the comedy and just the blending of genre. I mean, the really just seamless kind of, it really works on a lot of different levels. Yeah. As like, you think of like Lubitsch and some of these directors that were masters of that.
And it really hits as you watch it now as an adult. Like it really does hit and affect you. At least it does me, and that's why it'll always be one of mine. Forever, because it gets to a point where like every time she shows the clip of them there, when he should go up to her room but doesn't. Right. And every time they show that, and every time he, one, he sees it and recognizes it, and for the first time has the self-realization that, oh, I'm a coward. Right. But also, just the way he says, I was afraid. And that she asks him to repeat that. And that the way he I was afraid. Mm-hmm. And it hits me every time. And I'm almost a little sore that they undercut it with a joke afterwards, but it's such a big moment. And then there's the moment where where Rip Torn, and he is great, but the way he comes in, he gets the verdict, and then he puts it down and he starts talking about something else, and the way he just says you're going back, and the way that hits him, and then the whole final thing, like it really is kind of like a Billy Wilder type ending, where it's just like something happens and then like you're taken away, and like it's all one scene. The art design of the buses all going, and him seeing her, the way he's yelling out to her.
I thought about The Heavenly Kid too, only because of the usage of, in Heavenly Kid was like 85 maybe, or of like the subway. They used like subway escalators as like going to. It's just a similar kind of buses. It's what about when the woman sitting behind him? She goes, so young, AIDS. It's amazing. Yeah. And then she says, oh, let me tell you about my dog. You got a while?
Yeah.
So even after death, you can't avoid. And that made me think of Airplane. Yeah. When he's sitting there and he can't get out, he's stuck on this plane with. Right. And
I always like the whole moment with the stand-up comedian.
So great. And when he goes, how'd you die? He goes, I was in a coma. He goes, okay, let's play a little game. Elvis, living or dead? Living. Long coma. That's great, man. Just amazing.
And like, you know, just the perfect line of like, how did you die on stage like you?
I know. It's so great. And I love the believability of their growing interest in each other, the way they're like gonna leave and then they stay,
right? And
then they're like, man, glad we stayed, or whatever. I don't know. There was something about the way that played out that made it feel very real,
right? And just like the way he jokes with her, like she's like, do you want to leave? And he's like, no, I can't. That's my dad.
Right. I love it. I know. You know, they don't sell any of the jokes short. No. It's all interwoven into the narrative very well. And even jokes that are laugh out loud funny and could feel like bits in other movies don't feel that way.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. It's very effortless the way it goes.
When he goes, she was like, you see her place, and because at first you assume it's like Downsizing. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of it, but it's a very interesting film, and it's that sort of like, oh, you don't realize that like this isn't where everyone's living, right? And when he goes to her hotel, and she's like, well, where are you staying? He's like, probably some place where people that weren't very generous and didn't adopt anybody.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm at the Continental. Come over sometime. We'll paint it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Those are, I kind of gravitated towards that part of the film, I think, maybe more than being completely in it in a story sense. I guess for me, maybe that's where we might differ with how it hit us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't fully, I was like appreciating its humor and the writing and all these things, and not necessarily like in this world panoramically where this was I'm in this story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
And I don't know. Like it's weird because I think like for a lot of people, if gun to their head, they would pick Lost in America. And I gotta say, it was kind of a toss-up.
Yeah.
But there's something about the way the film, the way it was that I first saw it, that it was with my dad. That means something special to me. But also just like I said, like in college when it was like, everything had to be so personal and everything had to be, you got to open up yourself and you got to open up your heart and open up, everything that you feel and that could go one of two ways. Either you watch it and you're like, I don't care, or it can, or it can connect with someone. And there was something about I just remember looking at it and thinking about the device of sitting down and being able to watch your entire life and what that must be and feel like.
I mean, it's a brilliant device and just an idea for a movie.
And it allows him to, even if they didn't necessarily happen to him like that, you would have to, like Mike Nichols says, is like, what does that mean to me? Like, what is something like being bullied? Like, when in my life did I feel that? And it doesn't even have to be something. It could just be something as humorous as, I don't know how to work a chainsaw, and that's just funny.
Right.
If you're the type of person who didn't grow up around a lot of tools or didn't take the time to learn about a lot of tools, and then all of a sudden you're in this life. I always love the job interview is hilarious to me because that happens. You go in with I want this, and then the guy had a suit. The suit had an odor, and the odor said $45,000.
The strength of the individual set pieces as well, like the sushi chefs. I mean, that scene is just gold. And when the guy gets up to go, he goes, guys, I'm not leaving. I'm just going to the bathroom. I know I'm going to take a piss. Yeah. It's just like, it's just great, man. And it's not. It doesn't come off like a bit. It's just really cool how he's able to take the humor to push it so far out and then not really have it feel like it's forced.
Right. Or that it doesn't come off as mean-spirited, like they're making fun of.
It didn't. Yeah, it really didn't. It
because
was just,
then you got to like
they were just characters. I mean, it felt like it wasn't stereotyping. I didn't think. I think it felt like they were just these animated guys that were like, I don't know. Because
then they have a conversation. It's like, oh, it's a human conversation.
Yeah,
it's not just about having a joke.
The joke is not about how that sounds when they say it. Okay, it's not. That's not the. Right. It's about their characters, and this is a scene with characters talking.
And the guy that gets up. Yeah. His whole thing. I created all nude.
Yeah, right. It felt like a Coen Brothers dialogue bit. Yeah. Because it's like just the way the words were on the page were like that. That part actually reminded me of the scene in Invention of Lying when Philip Seymour Hoffman is sitting at the end of the counter. I don't know. It just felt it was almost the same angle. Like it just.
I would have to assume that Ricky Gervais.
Because it has the strength of it's like an idea. It's like, here's the idea. Yeah. When you die, you have to defend yourself like it's in a courtroom. Right. And you watch whereas, what if there was a play? What if you couldn't lie? Mm-hmm. What would the world be like? And it sends you down a rabbit hole of possibilities, writing-wise, right? And then it's like there's the good ones, and then there's probably tons of ideas that got left on the editing room floor, right? And
because either they just couldn't pull it off, or
it just didn't work. Maybe they even filmed it,
right?
And they're just like, you know what? That really shouldn't. That doesn't feel right in between this and this, or whatever. Well, the editing was great too. I thought it was really well put together.
And the production design, and because it allows because they're using, I mean, they do it so well. Like at the beginning, it's like we set this up to look like we want you to feel comfortable here, so we have it look like what you're accustomed to seeing.
Like familiar, yeah.
And that allows them
suggestion boxes at every corner. Yeah, there's some good lines, man.
But that allows them to, like, the production design is great, but it's not. It doesn't feel like another world. It doesn't feel like it's not like Gattaca. Yeah. It feels familiar, and it allows them to
he might be a back pocket filmmaker for Alexander Payne.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of Downsizing feeling a lot like this film, and then you think about just the About Schmidt character and getting older, and I don't know. It's just some of the neurosis that is involved in some of his characters, like in Sideways, the Paul Giamatti character.
Well, and just. With About Schmidt, About Schmidt is kind of a different version of Lost in America, because they're in the mobile home, right? They're driving around, and also he's not afraid to. Albert Brooks is not afraid to. Things look like they really look like. Alexander Payne talks about that in the commentary for Election, where he's like, I don't like things that always happen in movies. Like in movies, everyone's car is like sparkling clean.
Well, I think that's what was so impressive about Nebraska. It was really like his bare bones, just like this is life movie.
Yeah, and you get like not so much in Judgment City, because it does have to be kind of like an angelic type of place, but like the stuff when. In the beginning, the whole scene between, there's him addressing his colleagues at his business, but also him going to see the car salesman. Right.
By the way, I love this. It's not a car, it's a battering ram. This is what Patton drove. Hey, soldier, follow us.
I always love when he shows him the car and he's like, wow, it looks great. And he's like, that's not your car. This one's yours.
And that is, it's cool because it's like that is like a bit that's used
Yes.
in film. Like,
Right.
you know, oh no, that one's not yours. Like, that's been used before, but it still delivers, you know?
Right. Well, because he's able to, like, just, he sells it with, like, the perfect line, the perfect Albert Brooks line of, try not to show the other one. Mine looks like a turd now.
Right.
And then, and that just says something about his character, right?
Right.
That's what's kind of going to be on trial the whole time. And trying to think. Yeah, the whole, the way he dies, and then him having to explain to Meryl Streep how they, and that her story isn't, you know, she doesn't die in some heroic fashion, right?
Right.
She's, you know, she slips trying to get into a swimming pool, and I love that she's like, that's embarrassing for her, and that they're able to connect in that way. It's just one of those things where it's like they just nail the romance so well that, and that's why the ending, as big as it is, like in a lesser film.
You know what they did? They made it look like, so it was as if his personal salvation and the romance were on two separate tracks. And they ended up in the same place. Like the film literally brought them together. It's like, no, your salvation is that's part of it.
Right.
It's all one thing.
And that's why on this time around watching it it's so easy to paint Lee Grant's character as, okay, she's the hardened
Right.
Bitch that is going after him and wants him to fail.
Right.
But it was only on this time where I'm looking at it and it's like, no, she's almost like this really tough love angel that's there to point him and try to, like, show him, like, look how stupid you're being.
Right.
Like, why don't you just say that you're afraid? Just say it.
Right.
And then the scene in the like that wonderful set piece in the restaurant, the Italian restaurant.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the endless pasta noodle bit.
Right.
I mean,
and I always looked at, like, you know, I was like him looking at it. It's like, no, like, look, she's looking at me. She's like, I'm so embarrassed.
and she's so comfortable in her own skin that she even says to him at one point early in this, she goes, you know, anyone ever tell you you're like really stiff? You need to loosen up.
But that scene, like, I always saw her, Lee Grant, looking at it like that, like the way Albert Brooks is thinking that she's looking at it.
Yeah.
And it was only this time
She
around
almost looked at him a different way in that scene.
Well,
she was sort of looking at him like, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that, like, how I'm reading it now is that she's looking at him like, why are you looking at, like, why do you care about what I think? Why aren't you with this beautiful creature that's in front of you and having fun the way she's having fun?
Right. And the waiter.
You like pies?
Come on, he kills that scene. He goes, no, you did order that. He goes,
Yes,
you like
did.
shrimp? Like, he's just like, oh man.
You like broccoli? You like it with a lot of cheese?
It's really good.
Yeah.
Do you watch the show Love?
Yeah.
There's the scene when he gets set up with the friend, and they're at the restaurant, and the waiter is like, I don't know. It reminds me of it because I don't know. There's really great opportunities sometimes for great scenes when you're involving two people that have nerves about being on a date, and the waiter's like almost like a conduit between where they can, like, try to take their mind off the fact that they're so, you know. Yeah.
I really do think, you know, because Judd Apatow has his hands in so many things. Like, he has.
I would say
Love.
Apatow.
He definitely. He clearly put him in. He put him in. This Is 40. It's my favorite part of this.
Do you like The Scout? I know it's just a Brooks screenplay, but I grew up on that movie. Well, I would watch it all the time because it was on HBO all the time.
I know, and I always wanted, because I heard an interview with him where it was like, he's like, we really wanted it to be a small movie. We really wanted it to be like a real, like, deep movie. but they gave it a Rocky type ending
Yeah.
because that's what the studio wanted.
Right.
And he's like, he talks about it because I think he only produced it. He only produced it and starred.
Who directed it?
Michael Ritchie.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He does great sports movies.
Yeah.
I mean.
But he says that that's the battle that he wished he could have been involved more in that battle because
Right.
he felt like the director was just like, all right, we'll coattail to the studio. But
Brendan Fraser was great in that too.
Yeah. I've always loved, ever since seeing this. I mean, I've always loved him. Like, I think, and he's really he's a trained actor. It's not like he's just a comedian.
He is one of the best things about Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. That film is one of those films that's so mammoth that it has like 75 different reasons why it's good, But that is one of the, like, you really see, it actually adds so much to your appreciation of Sybil Shepherd's character to see them at work together.
Right.
And all those conversations on the page, yes, it's also a testament to the writing, but he really fully realizes that character, and he is just concerned about her. And as much as you get caught up in the romanticized kind of like nature of like Travis Bickle's character, he sort of grounds you in like, wait a minute, like he is coming off like a creep,
right.
Okay, and by seeing him through Albert Brooks's eyes, it actually provides this sort of like, as much as it's like Psycho, as much as you get caught up in like, oh wait, Norman is just a, maybe he's a good guy, maybe he's a good, it's
right.
like, no, this is something wrong with this person.
Well, and he's the reason why the scene when De Niro comes in and is like, and is verbally attacking, and then like, it's scary because of the way Albert Brooks is with him and then reacts to him.
Now, his moment-to-moment acting is very good. He's not just one of those guys that delivers like funny lines and then like gets onto the,
And I have to say, like, he's not like Woody Allen, where he can only play.
He's a much better actor than Woody Allen. Like,
because he can do so many different things.
Yeah.
I mean, he's great in Drive.
Woody Allen is a better actor than Seinfeld, but it sort of feels like what Seinfeld's doing, where like you're really funny, but you're not necessarily like,
Woody Allen can't do what Albert Brooks did in Drive.
Right, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, wow, that's worth a rewatch just to see that again.
Yeah.
Damn.
Do you know that? Not to go off on a tangent here, but it's sort of related. But Nicholas Refn Welding. So the reason why he approached Albert Brooks about even playing that part was that when he was a kid, he saw Lost in America, and the scene when he flips out when he's at the Hoover Dam, and Julie Haggerty's just like, yell. Get mad at me, but don't hold it inside.
Right.
And then he finally does, and he's like screaming. He's like, I saw that when I was a kid, and it scared me. Like, he scared me doing that, and that's why he's like, I need a psycho to play this guy. And he's like, hey, let's Albert Brooks.
You just made me think of an acting lesson that I had with this great acting teacher that I was so fortunate to have had lessons with. That a friend got me those, but he like had me go to this place of just tapping into like memories from the past that literally I was like screaming stuff, and not in like in a very primal way.
Yeah.
And he was like, because we were prepping a monologue to get it, and he's like, yeah, wow, I don't think that should be the way you play this, but I didn't even want to interrupt that because of where you were at, where like it's so cool to like see how far you could possibly go with that, which is essentially what you're talking about in that scene. I mean,
right, and he does that, and he's always been the one, like, even with movies that aren't necessarily 100% good, like The Muse, or
I've still never seen the muse.
There's moments in it where you're like, oh, like, you know, if the whole movie was kind of like this moment, then it would probably be good. But you know, I feel the same way. Like retroactively, like I loved Mother when I first saw it, and it was like one of my favorite Albert Brooks movies. But then when I went and I revisited it, it's you know, there's a half hour of that movie that's perfect, but it's surrounded by not so good.
Right.
But you know, it's still, it's like,
I never saw Looking for Comedy in the Muslim World.
Me neither. And
I remember when it came out.
Yeah. I researched it to see if it was on like Netflix or something, to see if I could just watch it. Just because it's still like, it's one of the only things of his that I haven't seen. But broadcast news, which I'm almost thinking is going to be a back pocket eventually for me.
I would love to watch that again. I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
I mean, his whole scene with Holly Hunter is like, that's I mean, like the scene.
There's some heavyweights.
Yeah.
In that movie.
Yeah.
Right. What do you got? Nicholson.
Yeah, Nicholson.
William Hurt.
Holly Hunter.
Right.
Albert Brooks. Robert Prosky. Yeah, I mean, Joan Cusack.
And is that James O. Brooks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the one film of his. I guess that's not true.
Certain people are just writer directors.
Yeah.
Like that's how you see them, and James L. Brooks definitely feels like that, and so does he.
Yeah, and and this is kind of like the exception, because with most of the people like that are writer directors, and this is probably why I kind of struggle with plot a lot when I was in college, is because I gravitated more towards these guys that were doing more character pieces. They were more about, you know, characters and situations more than, you know, here's a plot, here's an A to B plot, and then we'll put in all of our stuff.
Right.
And this felt like it was the first time where it's like, oh, I have a high concept kind of commercial idea, where I can put in all my bits and my scenes, and which is why it kind of stands out from a little bit from the rest. And you know, Roger Ebert says the same thing, where it's like his movies work for 2 quarters, and then in the end, like, he kind of struggles with the third act and trying to end it.
I haven't seen either Real Life or Modern Romance. Always meant to, just never happened.
I definitely see that. Modern Romance kind of has, you know, it's kind of like with Lost in America, where it's like the ending is the ending and you don't see it happening really any other way, but it's just so abrupt. Like, it's just like, you know, here's how we're going to end the movie, and then all of a sudden the credits are rolling. You're like, oh, all right. That's kind of how Lost in America feels, but also Real Life definitely feels like that.
This is a testament to the importance of an ending, because sometimes a bad ending can literally change the way I feel about a movie, or like it just really taints it in a way where I'm like, damn, like how are you going to do that?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta land it.
You gotta stick the landing.
You've been in a plane the whole time, and you have to know how to land it the right way.
Right, and you have to build, like, you know, it's like how great the two, like, if you're gonna have a big winning romantic ending, which this does, if that's gonna work, then you have to, the relationship has to be perfect and work together, and you have to be in love with their relationship in order to be affected by that ending. And you are, like, that this is an ending that, it's a feel-good ending that's earned and makes you feel good genuinely because of that, because he took his time and made it. It's the reason why at the end of Silver Linings Playbook, as you know, at first you're like, really, you're going to end it with the dance? And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, that was, you know, one of the great
it's sort
things.
of like the way Back to the Future sort of felt when you watch those Eric Stoltz scenes, and how different of a movie it might have been.
Yeah.
Where it really did need to be this film where it's like light and fun, and you're rooting for this character in a way that's more like, not that that's what this is, but you know, he could have gone the route of ending it much more cynically or much more, because he really does.
Right.
He's really touching on a lot of things, so it's like he could go either route with it. And I'm just glad that he chose to make the audience feel good in a very earned way, like you said.
Right. And I think it's also because you do have a deeply dark, emotional, 5 or 6 minutes before that happens. Mm-hmm. However you deeply go emotionally, it's the reason why It's a Wonderful Life works so well at the end, because it's awful seeing George Bailey, kick the.
I'd have to say that that's probably a back pocket film of his.
Of Albert Brooks. Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't even thought of that movie, but I mean, there's definitely some stuff that's if you're going to make a film like this, you watch It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
You watch Heaven Can Wait.
Yep.
There's Here Comes Mr. Jordan.
Yep.
You watch that.
Which is what Warren Beatty remade.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Which is an awesome movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, you watch those movies because it's like those are timeless classics. So it's like, how can I do my own thing with
these tools?
Yes, I need to see. It's important, I think, to reacquaint yourself with masters and what they did with it, and to learn from those who came before you. I mean, he seems like a student of film who found his own voice.
Yeah, and if you do any of the research on Albert Brooks and you come up with all the stuff that he did, like there's all the stuff that he did for SNL. Like he would make these home movies for SNL, these little shorts, and then, I mean, if you really want to lose a night, you could go on YouTube and just Google like Albert Brooks Tonight Show appearances, and it's crazy because it's like he almost used the Tonight Show as like an open mic, where he would just go on and just do these crazy, ridiculous bits that you like, and it teeters. It's like an emotional roller coaster because you're like, oh my God, this isn't working, and then he just undercuts it. Like he did this whole thing where he bombed for 10 minutes. I'm not even exaggerating. Like he bombed for 10 minutes. And then at the end, he just said, so I've been a comedian for 10 years, and as you can see, I'm out of material. And everyone like exploded with laughter.
And that gets a bigger laugh than maybe
right.
any joke, if he'd actually landed one in that 10 minutes, would have gotten. Right. Yeah.
But he would do stuff like that. He would bring on the little toy, the Speak and Spell, and he would do like he would like, instead of having like a doll that he would pantomime with, he had the Speak and Spell, and he would do like all these crazy bits, and it's just, he really was like, I'm dying. Like I know Mark Maron wants to have him on his show like so bad, like it's like the get that he wants. Yeah. But for some reason just can't land. But there needs to be like some big documentary about him, because it's kind of a shame that there's nothing about how this movie was made. Like
it really surprised me. There are movies that seemed much more obscure that actually had pages of information.
And it's it's some of it is kind of him. Like he doesn't like to do a lot of press. He doesn't like to do a lot of interviews about it. Yeah. Because like Lost in America they just released on Criterion, and the special features. I mean, it's like it's like a 10-minute conversation with Albert Brooks, talking about how he came up with the idea and everything. But there's not a lot. He kind of like, you just want to sit him down and be like, how did you do this? Like, what did what was the writing process like for you? What was the, how did you come up with Judgment City? How did you work with Ida Random as their production designer and make all these things? Who was it? Alan DeVoe that did the cinematography?
Shot E.T. and tons of films actually.
And you feel that it really is one of the best looking Albert Brooks movies.
Yeah, Falcon and the Snowman, yep. Empire of the Sun, Bugsy, Fearless, which I want to do at some point.
Mm-hmm. Who did that?
Direction-wise?
Is that
Peter Weir?
Ah, no, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another filmmaker that kind of made different films where it's like, you don't necessarily like, it's not like, oh, this is a Peter Weir film. I kind of like that sometimes when directors take on different projects and give them different feels.
Peter Weir always felt like, to me, like Lasse Hallström, where like they kind of have a sensibility,
right?
But they can do different stuff.
It's versatile. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this movie will always be that special back pocket film for me because of just what it means to me and like how special it is for Robin and I now. Like, it was funny because I showed her. I can't even remember what I showed her first of Albert Brooks, and she's like, "I don't like him. I don't like Albert Brooks." Like she just was like, "I don't like him." It was kind of like I showed Robin the Searchers, and she's like, "I don't like John Wayne." I'm like, "That's because you watch The Searchers. Let's watch Rio Bravo." And then she's like, "Okay, I love John Wayne." It's like,
well, you know, there's movies that I love that I let Amber borrow, and she watched The Disaster Artist and did not like it, and I thought it was the best film of that year.
Right.
I thought it deserved Best Picture, and it's like, hey, sometimes. So anyway, but you were saying so.
Well, what's crazy is what turned her, like, conversely, what turned her around was we saw Drive, and she's like, "Wow, Albert Brooks really did a good job in that movie." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I showed her Lost in America, and she still doesn't really like Lost in America, but she laughs at a couple. You can't not laugh at a couple of things, and then, but she really loves this movie. And again, I mean, I think it's just because it's just a really, really good movie that makes you feel good and is romantic in the best way, effective in the right way, and you know, kind of like all the types of movies that I really respond to. It's just, you know, how do you have a lot of heart and a lot of warmth, but actually earn it, and it doesn't come off as sappy or you know, maudlin.
It's like he wants you to feel what it's like to be in that seat during this trial.
Yeah. And we haven't even really, like, you know, talked about some of the things that are in there, but I mean, it's not the things that you would think that you would see, and that's why I can't help but think that it had to come from something, and like something that, like, you know, reflecting on your life and being like, I wish I had that moment to do over again.
You know, it's brilliant to. It just made me think of what's the movie with Jim Belushi, and Michael Caine plays the bartender, Mr. Destiny. I mean, a lesser version,
right?
Of that, but still a fun movie.
Yeah.
And that is a powerful concept of what if I could go back. Everyone's thought about that, and I love the just the idea of, you know, it almost feels like an SNL skit of the idea, or like an idea for a sketch of, like, you know, what if this was two lawyers arguing and the case is your life,
right?
And but the way they're like, I'd like to take a look at 14, 9, 10, you know what I mean? You know, the exact, I mean, it's just, it's really brilliant. Not only the idea, but the execution of the idea is very well accomplished.
Yeah. And the way Rip Torn is so, like, knows he's showing the wrong thing.
Oh, and then the other lawyer that he has for like a day.
Yeah.
Who doesn't do, like,
who, by the way,
everyone keeps saying is good.
Yeah.
And it's like, infuriates.
Oh, you are good.
Oh, you're not going to respond to that? Like, I don't know, man. So Brooks's reactions to things are really good.
Yeah.
It actually reminded me of
Peter Regan?
Local hero, yeah, local hero.
Yeah.
Very believable reactions. The facial expressions are funny because they're believable.
Yeah.
Like it's a reaction. It's not like, what can I do with my face here? It's like, no, it's just like, it's what you would do. It just feels very believable, all of it.
Like when the guy's like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. You want to come?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's good stuff. I love the anything that mentions Sizzler gets approval from me because as a kid we went there a lot. There was one in D.C. near where we lived, and we would go there and get the all-you-can-eat fried shrimp and the all-you-can-eat steak and shrimp. And I mean, so White Men Can't Jump, obviously. We go in Sizzler, bit, and then this when she says, it's like, oh, do you think you were dreaming about this place? And she goes, no, I think I was dreaming about the Sizzler near my house. Right? It's just, I don't know, man. The specificity, lines like that. It's like it's funnier than if you said, no, I was thinking about the restaurant near my house. Mm-hmm. Like the more specific you can get with that stuff is why it's funny.
Mm-hmm. And we always do this now if we happen upon a place and the food comes out super fast, but when he orders and then it comes right out, and he's like, was this made for someone else?
Right.
He really is a kind of just a special mind, a special comedic mind who could also do other things. As much as Woody Allen meant so much to me back when I discovered him, and then kept discovering all of his different movies, and because he has such a wealth of
so many movies, it's hard to watch everything.
Right. While Woody Allen is a specific thing, like it always felt to me that Albert Brooks had him on a couple of different things. Like as much as Woody Allen, when he does embrace kind of the lighter side, like with Midnight in Paris or Purple Rose of Cairo, which those two movies are good, but there's something about the specificity with Albert Brooks and the winning quality of Albert Brooks.
And you sort of, when you make that many movies, you sort of dilute your catalog a little bit. Right. Like for every Manhattan and Annie Hall, there's Small Time Crooks, and you know what I mean. That's the thing, and it's not that there aren't salvageable scenes in those movies, right? It's just that, and I actually do like some of his noir works, like Cassandra's Dream. They're good movies, right? They're like, and there's a number of movies I've liked in those later years, but.
So defending your life.
It's okay. We're allowed a good old-fashioned tangent we will go every now and then.
Wherever we need to go.
Okay.
But we'll always bring it back.
Movies. The umbrella.
But no, as I always appreciate him as a writer, and I think he is a person a filmmaker and a writer who respects story. And always finds the perfect way to put it in. And even like in the movies that he doesn't write, you kind of know why he attaches himself to, like Finding Nemo or even The Scout, and the way he really wanted to go to bat for Michael Ritchie, because it's like, no, you're hurting the story. Like that will always be something that I always stick to with him.
Yeah, it seems like he cared about doing it the right way.
Yeah,
and
that's why I really I want to know, like, what is he like as a director? How does he work with actors?
Right,
he gets great performances.
It's almost like the ones that do kind of have some sort of enigma around their work. Those are the ones you really want to see some sort of documentation, because it's like that's never really been answered. You don't really know what, because he does make very interesting films, very unique, personal films.
And he's a unique personal personality. So that's why I've always kind of wondered what it's got to be like to be in that Albert Brooks bubble.
He's very charismatic.
Yeah.
Inspiring. You just I don't know, the way he he makes you want to like live more. Like, you know what I mean? Like he just has this like energy when he delivers some of his lines that just feel very, I don't know, man, or inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Thank you for allowing me to talk about it.
Dude, thank you for letting me revisit this, because I hadn't seen it in almost 30 years, and I always remembered liking it, and so it was great to watch it again and have that be affirmed.
Yeah, it's a really great film. So you can, I'll put this up, but you can watch it on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on, you can get it on iTunes. Sadly, you know,
is it on Blu-ray?
The DVD.
It's not on Blu-ray?
It's not on Blu-ray.
It's so odd to me. Like, there are the most low-budget movies from like the early '80s that you could find.
That's why I'm really just hoping that whenever I see that something's not coming out on Blu-ray, and I like it, and I really would want them to do it, like it's around the corner on the Criterion list, because I mean, they did Lost in America, so they got to keep going. And they got to put this on there because it really is a great movie, and it, you know, it's a great movie that you can sit down with your significant other, and just, you know, there's something for it's a great date movie,
and you get invested in the characters.
You do, and it's a great introduction to Albert Brooks.
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. All right.
So we've got The Swimmer.
Awesome.
Next week.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
Burt Lancaster.
Yep.
Again. All right.
All right.
Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.